The desert stretched endlessly under the bruised sky of late afternoon, cliffs etched with the deep scars of centuries, and the wind carried the faint smell of dust, sage, and sun-baked rock. Colt Marston rode alone, his dark horse's hooves thudding softly against the parched earth, the leather creaking under his weight, a mournful song that seemed to echo across the canyon. Every ridge and gully seemed alive, places where predators and men alike could hide and wait, and Colt's gaze swept constantly, sharp as the desert sun cutting through the horizon. He had learned the language of silence here, the rustle of scrub, the faint whisper of wings above, the subtle shift of shadows on the rocks that spoke louder than any human voice. In the distance, the ruins of an old cabin sat half buried in sand, splintered with catching the dying light, a reminder of lives long past, of hardships endured by those who dared claim a place in this unforgiving land. Colt's hand hovered over the grip of his revolver, worn smooth by years of travel and trials, yet he had no desire for violence tonight. The desert demanded caution, not recklessness, and yet something stirred in the canyon. Something alive, desperate, and human. He slowed the horse near a narrow gorge, the river cutting a thin silver line below, and listened to the water's murmurs mingling with the faint cry of a hawk overhead. A movement caught his eye, a shadow crossing the ridge, large and deliberate, heavy footsteps pressing into the sand. Colt's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from recognition. The Apache woman appeared, tall and formidable, her frame powerful and commanding, carrying the weight of the canyon in every step. Her dark hair fell like a curtain over her shoulders, her eyes sharp and fierce, scanning the horizon as if she could read the intentions of the wind itself. He dismounted slowly. His horse snorted and pawed at the ground, nostrils flaring in the hot, dry air. Colt kept his distance, yet he felt the magnetic pull of the encounter, the energy of a woman so commanding that even the desert seemed to bend toward her presence. She didn't speak at first, only studied him with eyes like obsidian, unyielding, suspicious, and burning with untamed fire. Colt adjusted his hat, the leather rubbing against his brow, and finally spoke, voice low and measured. "You don't have to face this alone." A flicker of surprise crossed her expression, though it was brief, buried beneath pride and years of self-reliance. She stepped forward, the sand giving beneath her heavy boots, and the canyon seemed to fall quiet in anticipation, holding its breath. Every sense in the cowboy came alive, the smell of sweat and earth, the brush of wind against stone, the faint tremor of energy between them. She spoke, voice deep and resonant. "No man is strong enough for me," and Colt smiled faintly, though he didn't answer. He understood that words alone could not cross the gulf of trust and challenge that hung between them. The river below whispered like a secret, sunlight catching on ripples, shadows deepening beneath the cliffs. In that silent exchange, a story began, a collision of wills, courage, and the unspoken promise that the canyon was ready to witness something neither could foresee. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, and Colt realized that the first step had been taken, one that would carry them into danger, discovery, and a confrontation with destiny itself. The canyon seemed to hold its breath as Colt guided his horse along a narrow ledge overlooking the river, sunlight slicing across jagged rocks and golden sand. Naya stayed close, eyes wide, every muscle coiled with tension, hair damp from the morning dew and dust clinging to her skin. Colt's hand rested lightly on the revolver's grip, ready, yet he moved with deliberate calm, every step measured, every breath a negotiation with the desert. The wind carried faint whispers of movement through the cliffs, and Colt's eyes tracked every shadow, every flicker that might reveal pursuers. The soldiers had not given up, and he knew the moment of confrontation could come without warning. He listened to the river's murmurs, the scrape of a branch against stone, and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead, each sound sharpening his senses and anchoring him to the present. Ahead, the Apache woman moved with remarkable agility, navigating rocks and sand with a mixture of strength and grace that seemed almost preternatural. Colt's eyes never left her. She was his guide, his silent partner in this dangerous descent. Dust lifted around her boots in tiny spirals, sparkling in the early sun, and Colt felt the magnetic pull of her presence, the unspoken challenge, the fierce energy that demanded respect and attention. He lowered his voice, careful not to startle her. "We keep moving, step by step," he said softly. Her eyes met his, a flash of acknowledgement passing between them, a silent understanding that danger was real and that they depended entirely on one another. The canyon walls rose steeply on either side, cutting off light and confining them to a narrow path that twisted along the riverbank. Colt's horse pawed at the ground anxiously, nostrils flaring, sensing tension. He nudged it forward, guiding them with subtle shifts of weight, and Naya adjusted herself carefully, gripping the saddle horn for stability. The desert around them felt alive, every whisper wind. Every scattering of dust seemed loaded with threat. Colt's pulse quickened as he spotted a glint of metal on a ridge above. Soldiers were scanning, rifles raised, searching for any sign of movement. He froze, calculating the angle and distance, timing their next move with precision born of experience. Naya leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Will they see us?" Colt shook his head, voice low and steady. "Not if we move with the canyon. Not if we trust it as it trusts us." Every instinct screamed caution, yet there was no hesitation in his decisions. He led them into a small alcove of willows where the river widened, the dense foliage masking their presence from the soldiers above. Colt crouched beside Naya, hands still on the revolver, breathing controlled, listening. The soldiers' shouts echoed faintly, frustrated, as they failed to locate the hidden pair. The canyon seemed to exhale with them, the tension easing slightly, yet Colt knew the path ahead remained fraught with danger. The river glittered beside them, a fleeting ribbon of safety, and Colt allowed himself a small breath. Naya's gaze followed his movements, trust and fear intertwined in her expression. He looked at the horizon, the canyon stretching endlessly, shadows deepening, the sun climbing higher, promising exposure and confrontation. A silent oath passed between them. They would face whatever came next together, step by step, shadow by shadow, and the desert would witness their courage and cunning. The day was far from over, and Colt understood that this first movement to the canyon was only the beginning of a journey that would test every skill, every instinct, and every heartbeat. The morning sun climbed higher, casting a harsh light over the canyon as Colt and Naya pressed along the riverbank, every step measured, every sound amplified by the stillness of the desert. Dust rose in faint clouds around the horses' hooves, sparkling like tiny embers in the golden light, while the river whispered softly, carrying the scent of wet stones and sage. Colt's eyes swept the cliffs, noting every outcropping, every shadow that might conceal an enemy. He could feel the tension in the air, a weight that pressed against his chest and made every breath shallow and deliberate. Naya's hands clenched the saddle horn, her body taut with alertness, eyes darting to every movement. The fear she tried to mask betrayed in every flick of her lashes, every small intake of breath. The canyon was alive with possibility and peril, the kind that could erupt in violence in a single heartbeat, and Colt felt the thrill and danger-like coil in his chest. The soldiers were relentless. Their presence felt even when unseen, echoes of distant shouts and the occasional glint of sun on metal reminding them of pursuit. Colt nudged the mare forward, guiding them into a narrow passage where the cliffs leaned close on either side, the wind carrying whispers of reeds and the sharp tang of river water. Here, the canyon offered fragile sanctuary, a place to plan the next move, but it was also a trap, confined, easy to ambush. Colt's senses sharpened to every sound. The distant call of a crow, the scrape of stone against stone, the faint hum of wind across the river's ripples. Naya leaned closer, whispering, "Will they catch us?" Colt's voice was low, calm but commanding. "Not if we move like the canyon moves. Silent, unpredictable, and always one step ahead." Her eyes flicked to him, searching for reassurance and finding it in the measured steadiness of his gaze. Ahead, the river narrowed, forming a shallow pool where sunlight danced across the surface, highlighting submerged rocks and the dark shadows of water. Colt guided the mare carefully, hooves slipping on slick stones, muscles taut with focus. Naya's hair clung to her sweat-dampened face, and he noticed a fear that lingered beneath her determination, a fire she tried to hide but could not fully suppress. Colt's heart thumped not from the exertion of riding, but from the awareness that every moment brought them closer to the edge of detection, where one misstep could unravel their tenuous advantage. The canyon walls closed in, a cathedral of stone and shadow, echoing every whisper, every footfall, magnifying the tension until it was almost unbearable. Suddenly, a sharp clatter sounded above, a loose rock tumbling down a ridge. Colt froze, heart hammering, as Naya leaned instinctively toward him, eyes wide. The soldiers were near, scanning, rifles poised, their shouts faint but urgent, echoing off stone walls. Colt's hand moved to the revolver, fingers tightening on the grip, mind calculating distance, angles, and timing. The mare shifted nervously beneath him, nostrils flaring. Sensing the invisible threat, Colt exhaled slowly, letting instinct guide them, nudging the horse forward, weaving through reeds and rocks, shadows shielding them as they pressed toward the narrow canyon exit. Each step was a careful dance with danger, and the canyon seemed to hum with anticipation, the river singing a silver song of fleeting safety. As they moved, Naya's hand brushed against Colt's, a silent gesture of trust, and he felt the weight of that unspoken bond. The sun climbed, dust and river mist swirling around them, shadows stretching, highlighting precarious nature of their flight. Colt realized with every heartbeat that the canyon could either save them or betray them, and that the moments ahead would test their courage, their wits, and the fragile trust that now bound them together. The distant echoes of soldiers' shouts carried on the wind, reminding them that the danger was far from over, and that every second of respite was borrowed from fate itself. The canyon grew narrower, walls steep and jagged, shadows stretching long beneath the climbing sun. Colt guided his horse carefully, each hoof-fall measured, the mare's muscles taut with tension. Naya stayed close, her eyes scanning the cliffs, her breath shallow, every movement a testament to both fear and resolve. The river beside them shimmered silver, twisting like a ribbon through the canyon floor, its murmurs carrying faintly to the rock faces, blending with the whisper of the wind. Colt could hear every subtle shift, the scrape of stone under hoof, the snap of a reed brushing against leather, the distant hum of soldier voices carried faintly by the canyon air. He moved with precise, quiet efficiency, instinct honed by years of life on the frontier guiding him, reading the landscape like a living map, each shadow and crevice a potential ally or enemy. Above them, a glint of sunlight reflected from a rifle barrel hidden among rocks, and Colt froze, pressing his body closer to the riverbank. Naya instinctively crouched lower, gripping the saddle horn, eyes wide with apprehension. He whispered, "Stay low. Move with me, step by step." Her gaze met his, a flicker of trust softening the tension in her posture, though the fire in her dark eyes remained, a fierce warning to anyone who would challenge her. The soldiers above murmured among themselves, scanning the canyon's twists and turns, unaware of the pair moving silently below. Colt shifted the mare, careful to keep hooves on firm stone, moving as though the canyon itself guided their flight. Each motion was a negotiation with the landscape, a delicate dance where error could mean discovery and death. The river widened slightly, forming a shallow pool where sunlight danced across the water's surface, illuminating submerged stones. Colt nudged the mare forward, sensing every ripple, every shifting current as if the river were a living guide. Naya's hair clung damp to her skin, strands catching the sunlight like dark threads of shadow. He could feel the energy between them, a silent rhythm of trust and caution, each aware that the other's life now depended on the smallest decisions, the slightest movements. The canyon seemed to press closer with each step, rock walls rising like silent sentinels, echoing the faintest sound, magnifying it into a potential alarm. Colt adjusted the grip on his revolver, careful but steady, mind calculating escape paths, possible threats, and the angles the soldiers might use to trap them. Suddenly, a sharp scrape above, a stone dislodged from the ridge, shattered the tense quiet. Colt's pulse spiked, and Naya's body tensed instinctively, but they froze, shadows blending with rocks and river spray. A soldier's voice called out faintly, frustration lacing each syllable. Colt whispered, "Keep moving. Quiet, careful, step by step." Naya followed without hesitation, her confidence growing with every successful maneuver, her trust in him now a tangible bond, unspoken but unbreakable. The canyon, once a vast expanse of uncertainty, became a conduit of survival, guiding them through hidden ledges and under overhanging rocks, where the sunlight fell in shards and the air was cool and shadowed. By the time they reached a narrow alcove, the soldiers' voices had faded to distant echoes, and Colt allowed himself a cautious breath. Naya's hand brushed against his again, a silent acknowledgment of the reliance now forged between them. The river flowed beside them, carrying the scent of wet stone and sage, promising brief safety, but Colt knew it was temporary. Ahead lay a world of cliffs, ridges, and unseen enemies, each step a test of skill and nerve. They were not yet free, not yet beyond danger. Yet in that fragile moment of reprieve, a silent vow passed between them. They would face whatever came next together, the canyon witnessing the first chapter of a bond forged in peril and trust. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the canyon walls in streaks of amber and rose, Colt guided his horse along a narrow ledge that overlooked the deep river gorge. Dust swirled in small eddies, catching the dying light, and the air carried the faint scent of wet stone and sagebrush. Naya moved beside him, alert, silent, her every motion precise, a blend of caution and strength born from years of surviving the unforgiving desert. Cole could feel the tension coiled in her limbs, the readiness to spring into action at a moment's notice, and he knew that her fear was tempered with an indomitable will. The canyon around them seemed to hush, the wind bending through crevices like a whispering voice, carrying with it the promise of both safety and sudden peril. Shadows lengthened across the rocks, pooling like ink in the crevices, and the sun's dying warmth kissed the jagged edges of the cliffs, highlighting every ridge, every ledge, and every hiding place that might conceal a foe. Above, the ridge glinted faintly with the shine of metal, soldiers scanning for signs of movement, rifles poised. Colt's horse shifted nervously beneath him, nostrils flaring, ears pricked, and he eased it forward with subtle movements, guiding them beneath overhanging boulders where the sun did not reach. Naya's eyes darted from the cliffs to the river below, searching for any threat, and Colt sensed the pulse of her fear, the quickened rhythm of her heartbeat mirrored in his own chest. He whispered softly, "We move together, one step at a time." She nodded slightly, trusting the cadence of his voice as much as the steadiness of his presence. The canyon had become their ally, walls shielding them, shadows concealing them, and the river murmuring a faint song of fleeting security. Every sound was magnified, the scrape of stone under hoof, the whisper of wind through reeds, the distant cry of a hawk cutting across the sky. Colt's eyes scanned constantly, noting every subtle movement, every flicker of light. Naya's hair clung to her face, damp from exertion and the river spray, strands catching the warm light and casting shadows across her determined expression. Colt admired her strength silently, aware that this woman, so formidable, carried a fierceness that matched the desert itself. He knew that whatever lay ahead, their survival depended on trust, on instinct, and on the canyon's secrets that guided them as much as his own experience. They reached a narrow overhang, the river rushing below in a silver blur, and Colt dismounted carefully, hand still on a revolver, scanning every ridge and shadow. Naya followed, landing lightly beside him, her boots stirring dust and small stones. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a metallic scent, blood or rust, and Colt's instincts screamed caution. The soldiers' distant shouts echoed faintly, frustration seeping through the canyon walls as they failed to locate the elusive pair. Colt crouched beside Naya, assessing the terrain, tracing potential escape routes, noting each hiding spot where the soldiers might attempt an ambush. Every motion was deliberate, silent, a dance with danger, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, knowing that one mistake could cost both of them their lives. Night approached swiftly, shadows darkening the canyon floor, stars beginning to pierce the indigo sky. Colt looked to Naya, sensing the blend of exhaustion and determination in her gaze. The river's silver thread reflected the last rays of sun, a fragile barrier between them and the pursuing threat. He exhaled slowly, letting a fleeting sense of relief pass through him, tempered immediately by the awareness that this calm was temporary, borrowed only for a heartbeat. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Tonight, the canyon would be their shield, but dawn would bring choices they could not yet foresee. And in that quiet, Cole felt the first true spark of connection, a bond forged in peril and trust, fragile yet unbreakable, as the canyon held him in its shadowed embrace. Night deepened across the canyon, stars pricking the indigo sky as Colt and Naya pressed onward, shadows stretching long beneath the cliffs. The river beside them flowed silver in the moonlight, murmuring softly against stones, its rhythm both comforting and foreboding. Colt guided the mare with subtle shifts of weight. Careful not to startle her, the animal's hooves sending small puffs of dust into the night air. Naya stayed close, silent but alert, eyes darting to every movement, her posture taut, muscles ready to spring at any sign of threat. The canyon's hush was deceptive. Every creak of stone, rustle of reed, or distant owl's call seemed amplified, each a potential signal of approaching danger. Colt's hand rested lightly on his revolver grip. Senses sharpened, calculating every risk, measuring every shadow, every potential vantage point from which an ambush could strike. Above them, the ridge was alive with subtle movement, shapes shifting behind rocks, faint metallic glints catching the moonlight. Colt's pulse quickened, yet he remained steady, guiding Naya to a narrow ledge concealed beneath overhanging boulders. The canyon walls pressed close, a natural fortress, yet a cage at the same time, and Colt knew the margin for error had shrunk to nothing. He whispered, "Stay low." We moved together, quiet and precise. Naya's eyes met his, reflecting a mix of fear and fierce determination, and she nodded, following every instruction with disciplined care. The river's murmuring seemed to merge with their breaths, and the wind carried faint scents of sage and damp stone, each inhalation a reminder of the desert's vast, untamed presence. Every step was a negotiation with the terrain. The scrape of stone under hoof, the subtle vibration of the mare's muscles, the faint shift of loose gravel beneath boots. Colt adjusted his path constantly, moving in rhythm with the canyon, letting shadows and moonlight guide him. Naya's hair clung damp to her skin, strands catching the pale glow and casting soft shadows across her determined face. Colt admired her strength silently, aware that this woman, so formidable and unyielding, carried a power that seemed in harmony with the desert itself. Each careful movement through the canyon reinforced the silent bond forming between them, an unspoken promise that their survival depended on mutual trust and absolute attention to detail. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed across the cliffs, a shout, a stone dislodging, the faint report of a rifle. Colt froze, horse shifting beneath him, muscles coiled. Naya's hand brushed his instinctively, a fleeting gesture of trust, grounding him in the urgency of the moment. They remained still, letting the sound wash over them, the canyon amplifying it, transforming the ordinary into something loaded with potential threat. Colt scanned the horizon, noting subtle changes in shadow, the glint of metal, the faint shapes moving among the rocks. He pressed himself closer to the overhang, nudging Naya behind him, every sense alive. Their lives balanced on a knife edge, each breath a negotiation between caution and necessity, every heartbeat echoing the canyon's tense rhythm. As they waited in silence, the river's flow steady beneath them, Colt realized the canyon was no longer merely a landscape. It had become a participant, a silent guardian and judge of their journey. The stars above shimmered in cold light, and the cool night air brushed across their skin, carried with it both the promise of safety and the inevitability of confrontation. Naya's gaze met his again, and in that moment, Colt felt the depth of their connection. Trust, reliance, and the shared understanding that the dangers ahead would demand every ounce of courage they possessed. And in the stillness, as moonlight silvered the cliffs, the canyon seemed to hold its breath, waiting to witness the next chapter of a story written in shadows, sweat, and unspoken vows. The first pale hints of dawn crept across the canyon, brushing cliffs with soft pink and gray, while the river below shimmered like molten silver. Colt guided the mare with careful precision along the jagged ridge, each step deliberate, the thud of hooves muted against stone. Naya stayed close, crouched low in the saddle, her eyes scanning every ridge and ledge, muscles taut with readiness. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of sage and dust, and Colt felt it in his chest. A quiet reminder that danger never slept, that the soldiers hunting them would not relent until they were found. The canyon, once a sanctuary, now seemed a labyrinth, each turn an overhang a potential trap. Shadows pooled in deep hollows, hiding both predators and men, and Colt knew that a single misstep could unravel the fragile thread of safety that bound them together. The mare shifted nervously, sensing the subtle change in the air, and Colt exhaled slowly, steadying both himself and Naya. The cliffs echoed faint sounds, rocks scraping against one another, A distant hawk's call, the low murmur of the river carving its way through the canyon floor. Colt's hand rested lightly on the revolver grip. Muscles coiled with the practiced readiness of a man who had spent his life navigating peril. Naya's hair clung damp against her face, strands catching the emerging light, and Colt noted the fire in her dark eyes, the same fierce determination that had guided her through every danger the past day. He whispered, "We're almost at the ridge that leads out. Quiet now, steady." She nodded, her breath held, trusting him. Their silent communication, a lifeline amid the threat surrounding them. Above, faint silhouettes move along the ridges. Soldiers searching, scanning, rifles raised, the sun glinting off metal briefly before shadows reclaimed them. Colt pressed the mare closer to the canyon wall, guiding them under overhanging rocks and behind boulders, using the canyon itself as a shield. The river beside them flowed in silver currents, splashing softly against stones, carrying a scent of wet rock and earth. Colt's senses sharpened to every sound. The subtle shift of gravel underfoot, the whisper of wind through reeds, the faint echo of voices carried from a distant ridge. Naya's hands clenched the saddle horn, knuckles white, yet her posture remained strong, her presence unwavering despite the fear that rippled beneath the surface. Each step they took was measured, deliberate, an intricate dance with survival. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air, a distant rifle shot, stone dislodged from a ridge above. Colt froze, heart pounding, his hand tightening on the revolver grip. Naya instinctively leaned closer, eyes wide, and he whispered, "Move." Quietly now. The mare responded to subtle nudges, muscles coiled, moving with stealth and precision. They pressed through a narrow passage where the cliffs leaned close, the canyon walls echoing every footfall, every scrape of stone. The soldiers' voices carried faintly, frustration lacing each call as they failed to locate the elusive pair. Colt and Naya moved as shadows themselves, blending with rock and river, relying on instinct and the canyon's natural concealment. Finally, they reached a hidden alcove, the sun casting long beams through cracks in the cliffs. Colt dismounted, guiding Naya down beside him, and they crouched low, listening. The river's song continued, soft and steady, while the canyon held its breath around them. Colt felt the fragile bond between them strengthen. Silent trust forged in danger, each aware of the other's dependence. Yet, even in this momentary reprieve, the threat remained palpable, the soldiers' pursuit unrelenting, the canyon a witness to their flight. Colt's gaze met Naya's, a silent acknowledgment of the peril yet to come, and for a fleeting second, the canyon seemed to pulse with anticipation, as though aware that the day ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. The canyon narrowed as Colt guided his mare through a twisted path, walls rising steep and shadowed, each crevice and ledge a potential hiding place for both predator and pursuer. Dust and sand stirred beneath the horse's hooves, mingling with the faint scent of sage and river spray. Naya stayed close, crouched low, eyes scanning every ridge, every shadow, her body coiled with the strength of a warrior ready for sudden movement. The wind whispered along the canyon walls, carrying distant echoes of soldiers' voices, their rifles occasionally catching the pale morning light, glinting like distant stars of threat. Colt's hand remained on the revolver grip, every muscle alert, senses sharpened to the faintest hint of motion, every sound amplified in the quiet of the canyon. The river below flowed silver and serene, a deceptive calm against the tension that wrapped around them like a second skin. Colt and Naya moved silently, the rhythm of hooves and careful steps blending with the canyon's natural sounds. Above, a loose stone skittered down a slope, and Colt froze, pressing the mare close to the canyon wall. Naya mirrored him instinctively, eyes wide, muscles tense, yet there was no panic, only sharp focus. Colt whispered, "Step lightly, stay low, and follow my lead." She nodded, her trust unspoken but absolute, a bond formed in the crucible of pursuit and shared peril. The canyon seemed alive, every shadow a potential threat, every crack and stone a story of danger waiting to unfold. They reached a narrow alcove where boulders jutted out like natural walls, the river's rush below echoing softly. Colt guided Naya into the shadowed recess, their breaths shallow, movements deliberate, every sound calculated. The soldiers' distant shouts and frustrated calls drifted faintly across the canyon, but the pair remained unseen, ghost-like among rock and shadow. Colt's eyes swept the ridges above, noting glints of sunlight on metal, faint shapes of figures that might be waiting to strike. Naya's hair clung damp to her face, strands catching the early light, her expression a mixture of resolve and quiet fear. Colt sensed the energy radiating from her, the coiled tension of a woman who had survived harsh lands and harsher men, a force now intertwined with his own instincts. The sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows, and Colt knew they could not linger. The canyon provided temporary shelter, but pursuit would not relent, and the soldier's determination could turn deadly with a single misstep. Colt whispered, "We move again, quietly along the ledge. Keep close, trust your feet." Naya adjusted her posture, gripping the saddle horn firmly, ready to respond instantly. Together, they moved along the jagged path, the mare stepping lightly, hooves finding purchase among stones slicked with dust. The canyon stretched around them, silent but watchful, the river murmuring below, carrying scent and sound to unseen ears. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a rifle echoed, startling a flock of birds into flight. Colt's heart thumped, and the mare trembled under him, but he held steady, guiding them further into the canyon's embrace. Naya's hand brushes briefly, a silent affirmation of their shared determination. Every movement demanded focus, every breath measured, each step a negotiation with the terrain and the unseen threats above. They pressed forward, a pair of shadows in a canyon that seemed vast and endless, yet contained every danger imaginable. And as they navigated the final bend before a hidden exit, Colt felt the weight of responsibility, the fragile trust between them, the unspoken vow to survive whatever lay ahead, and the relentless knowledge that their flight was only just beginning. By midday, the canyon opened slightly, revealing a stretch of riverbank bathed in shimmering light, the water cutting through stones with silver sheen that seemed almost alive. Colt guided the mare carefully along the narrow ledge that overlooked the river, the ground uneven and littered with loose gravel. Every step required precision, the horse's hooves thudding softly, kicking up tiny clouds of dust and sand. Naya remained close, crouched low, her eyes sweeping the cliffs, the water, and the distant tree line for any sign of pursuit. The canyon walls echoed faintly with the rush of water, carrying a cool, wet scent that mingled with sage and sun-baked earth. Cole could feel the tension coiled in her limbs, a silent readiness, the kind that spoke of battles fought and danger survived. He admired the controlled strength of her movements, the way she balanced caution and courage, as if born to navigate these treacherous lands. Above them, sunlight glinted off rifles held by soldiers stalking the canyon edges, their movements slow and deliberate, scanning for any sign of the elusive pair. Colt pressed the mare closer to the riverbank, using boulders and fallen logs as cover, every motion deliberate. Naya's hair clung to her damp skin, strands catching the sunlight, and Colt noted the fierce determination in her eyes, a mix of defiance and desperation. The river's current whispered below, offering both a path and a barrier, a reminder that nature could be both ally and enemy. He whispered, "We keep low, step where I step. Trust the canyon, trust me." She nodded, silent, her trust unwavering, a bond formed in the crucible of pursuit and shared danger. The riverbank widened into a shallow cove where wildflowers clung to crevices and rocks, their colors muted by dust and sunlight. Colt guided Naya down from the ledge, moving silently, the mare stepping carefully through stones slick with moisture. Every sound was amplified, the scrape of hooves against rock, the rustle of reeds, the faint murmur of the river. Colt's senses were sharp, attuned to every subtle change, a shifted shadow, the glint of metal, the faint echo of distant voices. Naya's hands gripped the saddle horn lightly, her posture coiled and ready, yet calm. They moved as one, shadows among shadows, every motion synchronized, a dance of survival in a canyon that seemed alive with anticipation. Suddenly, a rifle shot rang out, distant but clear, sending a flock of birds into the sky in a frantic burst of wings and calls. Colt froze, heart hammering, and guided the mare behind a large boulder, pressing Naya close. She mirrored his movements, silent, a flicker of fear flashing in her eyes before she steadied herself. The canyon walls echoed the shot, amplifying its warning. Colt whispered, "We move again quietly now." Naya adjusted, ready to spring into action, and together they crept along a hidden ledge above the river, every step deliberate, blending with the canyon's natural sounds. The murmur of water, the sigh of wind, the faint creak of distant branches. As they reached a bend, the river opened into a wide pool, reflecting the sky in a mirror of silver and pale blue. Colt guided Naya to the far edge, crouching low, eyes scanning the tree line for any movement. The canyon seemed to pause with them, the sun glinting off rocks, water, and leaves, a momentary lull before the inevitable confrontation. Colt sensed a fragile balance between danger and escape, and in that suspended instant he felt the weight of their trust, the silent oath to survive together, and the awareness that the next steps would test them beyond anything they had endured. Shadows lengthened, the river murmured, and the canyon held its breath, waiting to witness what would come next. The river widened before them, silver and serene, yet Colt knew serenity could be deceptive. Every sound carried along the canyon walls. The soft rush of water, the scrape of stone beneath the mare's hooves, the distant calls of birds startled by unseen movement. Colt guided the horse with careful precision, hooves finding grip on slick stones, muscles coiled with controlled tension. Naya stayed close, crouched low in the saddle, her eyes sweeping the cliffs and tree line, every nerve alert to the faintest hint of danger. The canyon itself seemed alive, watching, listening, responding to every motion. Dust and sand swirled around them, catching the sunlight in miniature storms that mirrored the tension between pursuer and pursued. Colt whispered, "Keep low, keep steady, trust me." She nodded silently, her trust absolute, a bond forged in danger and necessity. Above, soldiers moved cautiously along the ridges, rifles raised, their boots scraping loose gravel, echoing faintly down to the riverbank. Colt pressed the mare closer to the river's edge, using rocks and fallen branches as cover, every step a negotiation with terrain and peril. Naya's hair clung damp to her skin, strands catching sunlight, framing eyes that were sharp, fierce, and unyielding. Colt could feel her coiled strength, the readiness for sudden action, the quiet ferocity that had guided her through previous dangers. The river's current whispered below, a constant reminder of nature's unpredictable hand, carrying scent, sound, and shadow downstream. They moved as one, a pair of shadows blending with stone and water, every breath measured, every heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of survival. Suddenly, a rifle-sharp report echoed from above, startling a flock of birds into frantic flight, their wings thrumming the canyon with noise. Colt froze, muscles coiled, and guided Naya behind a large boulder. She mirrored his movements instinctively, eyes wide but controlled, a flash of fear quickly replaced by resolve. The canyon amplified the shot, transforming it into a warning, yet they remained undetected, ghost-like, attuned to every flicker of movement. Colt whispered, "Move now quietly. Follow me." Naya adjusted, her body coiled and ready, and together they crept along a narrow ledge hugging the cliffs, the mare stepping silently, hooves sending up only minuscule puffs of dust. The river widened further, revealing a pool reflecting the sky like molten glass, soft sunlight dancing on its surface. Colt guided Naya to the far edge, crouched low, eyes scanning the tree line for motion. The canyon seemed to pause with them, the waters murmuring a quiet accompaniment to the tension that wrapped them both. Colt sensed the delicate balance of their escape, the thin line between concealment and exposure, between survival and capture. Naya's hand brushed the saddle horn lightly, a silent confirmation of her readiness, their bond strengthened by every perilous step. Each breath, each movement, carried the weight of unspoken trust and the knowledge that danger could strike from any direction. Above, a glint of sunlight off a rifle barrel drew Colt's attention. Soldiers were closing in, the canyon's embrace now a corridor of inevitable confrontation. Colt's pulse quickened, yet his movements remained steady, guiding Naya with precision and calm. He could feel the river's pull below, the canyon's looming cliffs above, the weight of responsibility pressing him to protect the woman who had become his equal in courage. They moved silently, shadows among shadows, the river murmuring beneath, the canyon holding its breath. And as they reached the next bend, Colt knew the moment of reckoning was near. The day would test them as never before. The canyon a witness to courage, trust, and the unyielding will to survive. The canyon narrowed sharply, cliffs pressing close on either side, the river rushing below like molten silver reflecting the morning sun. Colt guided his mare with practiced precision, muscles coiled, every hoof step deliberate against the uneven stones. Naya stayed low, crouched in the saddle, eyes darting along the ridge, scanning for movement, every nerve taut with the anticipation of danger. The air was alive with tension, the whisper wind through crevices, the faint rustle of leaves above, and the distant echoes of soldiers' boots scraping loose gravel. Colt could feel the pulse of the canyon beneath him, each tremor through stone and dust a warning of the relentless pursuit closing in. The mare's flanks heaved softly beneath him, hooves thudding against rock in quiet rhythm, dust spiraling in miniature storms around them. They reached a narrow ledge that overlooked a deep chasm, the canyon walls rising like sentinels around them. Colt pressed the mare closer to the rock, keeping Naya shielded, guiding each careful step with the precision of a man who had survived countless perils. The river's murmuring below provided a constant, deceptive calm, carrying the scent of wet stone and sage, mingling with the acrid tang of distant gunpowder. Naya's hair clung damp against her face, catching sunlight, framing eyes that were both fierce and wary. Colt noted the coiled strength in her posture, the quiet determination in her movements, the way every muscle responded instantly to the slightest hint of threat. He whispered, "Steady now. The ridge ends at the cliffs." We moved together carefully. She nodded, silent, trusting him entirely, the bond between them sealed in shared danger and unspoken understanding. Above, a glint of sunlight on metal caught Colt's eye. Soldiers navigating the upper ledges, rifles poised, eyes scanning for the pair who had become ghosts in the canyon. He pressed Naya back slightly, the mare shifting instinctively under him, hooves finding precarious purchase on the jagged rock. Every motion was a negotiation with the canyon itself, a delicate dance with gravity, pursuit, and survival. The wind carried distant voices, fragmented commands, and the soft scrape of soldiers moving over stone. Colt's senses sharpened. He read every shadow, every glint of sunlight, every echo along the canyon walls, predicting danger before it manifested. Naya's hand brushes briefly, a silent reassurance, and he felt the connection, the trust and resolve that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. A sudden shot rang out from above, shattering the canyon's fragile quiet. Colt pressed the mare closer to the cliff wall, guiding Naya low, and the echo reverberated against stone, startling birds into frantic flight. Dust and debris tumbled from the cliffside, settling in miniature storms around them. Colt whispered, "We move now," fast and quiet. Naya adjusted, her body coiled like a spring, ready to react instantly. The ridge ahead narrowed further, jagged rock jutting into their path, the canyon channeling them into a perilous corridor where one misstep could prove fatal. Every heartbeat resonated with the pulse of danger, every breath synchronized with the mare's steady rhythm. As they pressed forward, the canyon seemed to grow silent, the river's murmur below the only sound, a deceptive calm before confrontation. Colt's mind raced, calculating every step, anticipating every soldier's movement, while Naya mirrored him, fierce, alert, and unwavering. The narrow path demanded absolute focus, the edge dropping sharply to the river below, the walls towering above, hiding potential threats. Colt could feel the gravity of the moment, the culmination of flight, trust, and survival, and knew that the next bend, the final ridge before the canyon opened to open plains, would test them beyond endurance. Every shadow was alive, every stone a potential danger, and the canyon held its breath, ready to witness the final reckoning. The ridge narrowed until the canyon walls felt suffocating, pressing from both sides as Colt guided the mare with every ounce of care. Naya stayed close, crouched low, her eyes darting along the cliffs and the river below, muscles coiled, ready for instant reaction. The wind cut across the canyon, carrying the faint tang of wet stone and distant gunpowder, mixing with the scent of sage and sun-baked dust. Each step was deliberate. Every footfall was measured against the precarious ledge beneath them. Above, the soldiers advanced cautiously, rifles poised, glinting in the sunlight like threats suspended in time. Colt's hand remained steady on the revolver grip, every sense alive, attuned to the whispers of the canyon. The scrape of boots, the rustle of leaves, the faint glimmer of light on steel. A sudden shot rang out, echoing violently through the narrow corridor of stone, and a flock of birds erupted into the sky, their wings thrumming against canyon walls. Colt pressed the mare closer to the cliffside, shielding Naya as dust and small stones tumbled around them. Naya's hand brushes briefly, a silent affirmation of courage, trust, and shared resolve. The canyon seemed to pulse with tension, alive with danger and anticipation, the river below rushing like a silver heartbeat. Colt whispered, "Hold tight. The next bend and open ground." Naya nodded, eyes fierce and unwavering, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The path opened slightly, revealing a stretch of sunlit canyon floor, a brief respite before the final push. Colt guided the mare with precision, hooves finding purchase on slick stones, dust and gravel skittering with every careful step. Shadows of soldiers fell across the canyon floor, but the pair moved like ghosts, every movement blending with natural sounds. The river murmuring, wind scraping across rock, distant calls of startled birds. Colt's pulse quickened, knowing that the final confrontation was imminent. Yet every step forward was an act of survival, a testament to trust and courage forged in fire and shadow. Suddenly, a soldier's boot slipped on loose stone, a sharp clatter that echoed like a gunshot. Colt reacted instantly, raising his revolver and firing, the shot ringing against the canyon walls. Dust exploded around the soldier, and Naya seized the moment, her voice low and commanding as she drew a small weapon from her belt, ready to defend herself. The soldiers faltered, retreating up the cliffs, realizing that the pair before them were not ordinary prey. Colt guided the mare forward, every muscle taut, heart hammering, eyes scanning the canyon for any further threats. Naya's grip was steady. Her gaze locked on him briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement of survival and triumph over relentless pursuit. The canyon finally opened into a wide expanse of desert, sun blazing over undulating dunes, the river stretching like a silver ribbon through the golden terrain. Colt slowed the mare, breathing heavily, sensing the moment of respite, the culmination of danger and escape. Naya slid down from the saddle, her feet landing softly in sand, eyes scanning the horizon, yet unbroken in spirit. Colt dismounted beside her, feeling the weight of everything they had endured. The pursuit, the canyon's trials, the silent oaths of trust and survival. Together, they stood in the vast openness, the wind lifting hair and dust, a silence that was more profound than any gunshot. For the first time, the canyon behind them no longer held threats, only memory and the echo of what they had overcome. Colt extended a hand, and Naya took it, her grip firm, eyes bright with relief and something deeper, a recognition that strength, courage, and trust could conquer even the harshest trials. The river sparkled below, the canyon walls receded into distance, and the desert stretched endlessly ahead, promising freedom, yet reminding them that survival had come at a cost. And as the wind whispered across the dunes, Colt realized that the bond forged between man and warrior woman in the shadowed canyon would endure far beyond this day, a testament to courage, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of the Old West.